All right, everyone, we start off today with a little bit of foreign news here. There are protests right now boiling over in Hungary, including Budapest, where tens of thousands of people protested, link in the description, archived of course, because their outgoing president, she has resigned, Novak, had pardoned an individual who was a child molester. And people found out, and naturally they were upset at this, because they're like, what the hell is going on? Hungary gets generally billed as being a fairly morally traditionalistic and kind of authoritarian government on the right-wing side. Of course, authoritarianism is always inevitably left-wing, but in the moralistic sense, in the legalistic sense. And so it's shocked people over in Hungary. But I've noticed one thing about this. Of course, I think it's condemnable to let go of somebody who's probably going to go and re-offend, sight unseen, and she comes out and it was basically a pity me party, at least by the translations I saw, and it's like basically, oh, I'm really, really sorry, I made a mistake, I didn't know what I was doing. It's more like, no, you didn't realize that you were going to get caught out for doing it, and I have no clue why that transpired. It's unacceptable. Can you imagine pretty much in any country, well, any civilized country, letting somebody go, again, sight unseen, when the crime is significant? Again, I use the four-square system of crime, and I fix for whether it's violent and or whether it's significant. I would consider raping a kid to be both violent and considerable, and do not believe that pardon should generally be granted in such cases. Because it's clearly wrong. You're violating the rights of not only a person, but a child, a person who's helpless, and so it's uncomfortable. But the legacy media is spinning the story. I see Viktor Orban being mentioned more often than the fucking outgoing president. And really, they're trying to target him. He's the prime minister of Hungary, so he's effectively in charge. The presidential role there is much like in Russia, a little bit more watered down. So you have the prime minister, that's effectively your executive. The presidential role is kind of secondary to it. And for some reason, though, they're blaming Viktor Orban and saying that it's his problem. Well, he's not the one that issued the pardon. He's not the one that made that decision. In fact, I don't believe initially was even cognizant of the fact that this had gone on, and presumably would not have greenlit it. I don't think that Viktor Orban, of all people, would have been amenable to this particular pardon being granted. Perhaps there should have been some consultation involved between the president and prime minister's offices on this particular case. But the legacy media in the West is casting it off as though it's a scandal embroiling Viktor Orban and his party. Well, no, it has to do with one apparently slightly nutty individual making a huge goddamn legal error and not knowing what the hell she was doing. And she resigned. So she's gone. Probably will be prosecuted by Orban's people at some point for stirring the pot. I don't know under what situation in a million years she thought this was a good idea, but it was not Orban's decision that he himself or the party at large made. This is an individual who made an extremely irrational and unfortunate decision of her own accord. The legacy media, though, has a problem with Orban. Why? Well, let's list the ways. Viktor Orban is more Eurosceptic than many politicians would be. Wants to have Hungary for the Hungarians and sort of do the Hungarian thing. By the way, great cuisine. A lot of beets, which I can appreciate, of course. And wants to be, he's a little Trump-like, or like a Javier Milei or something, although more on the moralistic side, I think, than anything. And so he's at least somewhat anti-globalist. So they don't like him. And so this scandal, which actually involves the presidential office, is being construed as his problem. They're doing that on purpose because they really want to get rid of Orban. When they're looking at these protests, they're salivating, saying, oh my God, Orban's party is going to be implicated in this at large. Again, despite their lack of knowledge that this happened originally. And so maybe Orban will be out. Wow, that'd be great, because Viktor Orban bad. Viktor Orban, who is skeptical of World War III. Viktor Orban, who is more internalized and says, look, we've got Hungary and we're the Hungarians and we're going to manage our country, and fuck the EU when they say that we have to water down our culture and have people in the country that won't assimilate, like, you have in France or Britain or some of these other countries. He's from that post-Soviet East Bloc region where they understand the credible threat of that sort of globalistic mentality. They've already lived under it. I hate to tell all of the East Blockers and tankies out there, but effectively the Soviet Union reaching across half of Eastern Europe was an imperialistic and globalistic move, actually. You may think that the Red Army was cool because of brutalismus or something, but it was an imperialistic expansionist experiment. Just happens to have failed. It was nothing more than the Russian Empire continuing to reach out, only under a different economic system anyway, and the Hungarians and the Polish and the Estonians and so forth, that they've suffered under it already. This is why they are averse to the so-called diversity and equity thing. I wonder why that could possibly be. Because they've got first-hand experience with it. You should listen to Eastern Europeans that were alive behind the Iron Curtain before you endorse globalism or socialism or anything like that. And they are intertwined, of course. Again, authoritarian ideologies are inevitably left-wing. They're socialist in nature at the very least. The mass protests are justified. I'd be protesting too. It's like, okay, my president just let go of a violent child molester in the dead of night, and apparently was too retarded to think that people would find out about it. It's probably a little bit of an oversight, but she has resigned. I mean, she's gone. So, I mean, other than potentially retroactively prosecuting her, or at the very least diminishing her career prospects, why would you jump down Orban's throat? He didn't sign off on it. It's not part of his prime ministerial powers anyway. I think in a nation like Hungary, Katalin Novak is the one that did that. She's from the same party, maybe, okay, that's granted. That's like saying that Donald Trump is responsible for that GOP senator that time who tried to get like a gay reach around in the bathroom stall. That dude who said, well, you remember his excuses, well, I have a wide stance. He was doing that foot tapping thing that apparently is like basically come service me in a homosexual manner. I don't know exactly. And but he was trying to solicit, some gay action while being a Republican. And back then that wasn't a good idea. You probably don't get elected as a log cabiner back in the 2000s. And he used that excuse. But that's like saying that some other generic Republican like Trump or even like even a neocon like McConnell is somehow responsible for what that individual did. As long as recourse is given and punishment administered, it's not a problem for his party and it's not a problem for Viktor Orban. She's already resigned. Viktor Orban should come out and punish her, absolutely. Throw her under the bus and make an example of her. Condemn her publicly, I think he already has done that. And then launch an investigation. Definitely, that's what should be done. People who are calling for that at these protests are absolutely justified. But when the Western legacy media pretends that Viktor Orban was the one that issued the pardon or something like that, that's unjustified. There's no responsibility on that end from him whatsoever. The responsibility now simply sits with him to do something about what occurred. Like, tell this individual that was pardoned, pick him up on some lesser offense and put him back in the Huskow so, they're not going out and raping toddlers or something like that. Just another good Democrat. That's about all. Peace out.